Wendy Jo Carlton.
Love you, like, for that.
You can't see the audience.
Can you guys see it?
No. Can you see them? Okay.
Can you see Jacqui who plays the and Fawzia and Mirza, Wanda? Fabulous actors from Chicago. Where should we start?
Well, there's a question right there. We can stop there.
Person in the middle.
Yes, hi, Wendy Jo and A.3gp. You absolutely hit a home run.
Oh, thank you.
The sound, the cinematography, the editing, your casting, everything was just so beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Two questions. How soon can we see a soundtrack that we can purchase? And the John Cougar Mellencamp reference, please help me.
Oh, you didn't get it? You didn't get it? You ever had sex in the backseat of a car in the middle of the summer?
Somebody has.
Okay. That's, yeah.
We'll talk to you later.
You know, I grew up in Michigan, and I grew up with kind of rock and roll, Midwest, sensibility. So for me, the John Cougar Mellencamp is like how when I was first coming out, I just recall feeling like, relating to when Bob Seger or John Cougar or Tom Petty was singing about women, I was relating to them singing about women in the way they were. And that's what's happening with Elizabeth right there. And Marika Engelhardt, who plays Elizabeth, is also a fantastic actress. And in that particular scene on the dock, most of our cast is queer identified in real life. And Marika straight identified, and I was watching them doing that kiss on the dock. And Jessie, in real life, the blonde. This is the last thing we're doing. Well, that's our Greek gay chorus. They're wonderful. Anyway, long story short, so I was watching from afar, blocking, and the dyke in the scene was doing what I needed Elizabeth to be doing, which was, being the more assertive, confident older woman, and the opposite was happening. So I had to go up to them, and I said to Mirza, I said, okay, so when you say your line, you make me feel like John Cougar Mellencamp, it's not your mouth saying it. It's the other thing saying it. So let the other thing say it, and then she nailed it. So that's the long answer to your question. Oh, soundtrack, that's going to take some time to pull together and produce, but probably by the end of the year. And you can, if you go to jamieandjessie.com, there's a mailing list. If you join the mailing list and you go to Jamie and Jessie, I'm doing constant updates, and we also have a Facebook page and tons of photos of stills of the film and the making of with all the pretty cast in it. So yeah, join the mailing list, that'd be great.
So I have a question for you. When you cast, you make everybody sing as well, because all of you have such amazing voices in terms of the music. You have amazing chemistry in terms of all of you together, and you're all incredible on screen, and you can all sing. So it is like a home run, it's true, but I wondered how you did the casting process.
Okay, I worked with Jacqui and Hannah Free. She played Greta, and so in the back of my mind, I always wanted to work with you again, and she knows that. And we would touch in. She goes, "Is that the script ready?" I was working on a different script when last June in Chicago, I gave her a ride down to the Chicago Dyke March, and she said, "You want to pick up my friend Jessica on the way?" And I never met Jessica, the blonde. They both went to DePaul theater school together. So Jessie and Jacqui were in the car, and I watched them from afar, and I thought, if I didn't know, they'd look together, and they're not. And I know I've had that with one of my best friends. People always assume that you're together. And there's, this issue of intimacy and how we read intimacy, from afar, but also how our culture is kind of repressed without physical affection and all that. And yet, real life is the fluid intimacy boundary thing that a lot of gay ladies can enjoy. So anyway, by the time the Dyke March was over, I gave them a ride home, and I said, I think you're both the next leads of my next movie. And then started writing.
Did you know this is thing so long?
I didn't know she can really sing. Come over here, you guys. You talk about it. We talk.
Did I know if you knew I could sing?
No, there's
Well, since that was how the movie was pitched to me, was on the ride back up home from the Dyke March in Chicago, not having a script and not having the music even thought of at that point. It was some months down the line, no, weeks down the line, when Wendy Jo called me and she's like, I think it's gonna have music in it. I think I can sing, and I was like, okay, I'm cool with that. And I think I called Jess right after. I was like, Jess, are you cool with this? I want to know if you're cool with this. And she was like, no. But it all worked out for the best. And, you know, when you got a couple of actors who were willing to step up to the plate and do whatever we're just make a movie.
And Fawzia as well?
I actually was a little nervous when Wendy Jo told me. I was excited when she said, hey, I'm interested in you casting you for this project, and then she said, oh, by the way, you have to sing. And I don't sing, per se. But what was really exciting was that she was really willing to just look at me as an actor with sort of this potential and say that, you know what, let's work with it because I want you, and you know, we're gonna make it work. It doesn't matter. And you know, being a theater person predominantly, for me, that was really exciting because it sucks, you know, when someone says to you, yes, we have an amazing role for you, but you have to sing. Do you sing? And it's like, what kind of singing do you do? Yeah, define singing. So this was, for me, it was fantastic that Wendy Jo was just like, you know what, I'll take your and I'll make it something that really, really works. So that was my experience with the singing.
Question? Yes.
Congratulations. Two questions, some of the basics. What did you shoot on and how many days did it take?
We used a Canon 7D with some nice lenses. My DP is Gretchen Borben. It's an old friend of mine, and she's a wonderful shooter and friend and collaborator, and she lives in LA. And we shot this in 17 days.
Wow.
Thank you. And the bookstore, the bookstore scene is a real bookstore that is still in business. That is the Women and Children's Birth is a lesbian feminist bookstore. That's fabulous. You know, there's a lot of kind of Chicago background, a letter to Chicago kind of thing in the movie as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
More questions? I'll give you a second question, that's fine.
I do want to get in second question, Carol. This is very different from Hannah Free, and you're just so talented, but it's obvious that this budget was much greater. Did your success with Hannah Free help you raise money for this?
Maybe a little. The budget for Jane and Jacqui Are Not Together is a lot lower. A lot lower.
What?
A lot lower. And it was primarily funded at the start of the Kickstarter campaign that we did like last July, August. We got $21,000, and then we just wanted to move forward. And I knew Jacqui really was moving to New York in real life, so I didn't want to lose her. I wanted to get the story made, and kind of by kismet, a lot of pieces then started coming together, including working with my fellow composer, Stephanie McCullough. She's the music director at Second City, and she's fast, and she's fabulous, and, it comes with her with the lyrics and the melody, and then she was just, she's the real pianist. And she was great, and it all happened quickly. Because we had to record all the songs before we shot, because they're listening to themselves, so that the sound is, professional sound.
I don't know whether you know this, but from a programming perspective, this literally has just been finished. It just all premiered in Frameline, and it went to LA Ad Fest. And we actually have the East Coast premiere. This film's only shown 3 times in the world, so we're really lucky to have everybody here.
Do you have more questions?
Anything for Jacqui and Fawzia?
Yes, a question.
I just wanted to compliment you. It's really fun getting this first season love it when we've had women involved, shapes, sizes, age, ethnicity. And in particular, I'm just curious, the dating scene, like the blind dates Jessie was going through, or the mainstream, they were just kind of, what was your inspiration? Like, did you have a lot of fun?
The blind date?
That just would have been like fun as performance.
Yeah, well, I sat down with Jacqui and Jessica early on, and we just had, we talked for a couple hours just about anecdotes and bad blind dates and compared notes, and then I just mixed and matched and fictionalized, and then found the women to be those people. And if you remember, John is setting her up on those blind dates. So in the back of my mind, I'm picturing John has a thing for Jess, and that's off screen. It's going to happen later. John has the thing for Jess that Jess has for James.
Yeah.
And that's why she's setting her up with people she can't do anything else.
Yes, you have a question. I see your hand.
I think I'm kind of contradicting myself with this question, but are you going to try and market this film mainstream and we would be able to see it as an indie film?
Yeah, I would love that. I would love that.
How does that work?
Pardon?
How does that work?
How does that work? I just submit it to mainstream festivals. There's a festival window that happens first before DVD, digital, and VOD and all of that. So, like 5 or 6 months from now, we'll have DVD, digital, Comcast on demand, that kind of stuff. And yes, I do think it can stand the crossover in terms of quote unquote mainstream. And it's a universal story, they have the straight version of that a lot, and not so good at it.
Have room for 2 more questions. Let's get screening
You
tomorrow.
people are tidy.
Yes.
No questions?
You have a question?
Great job.
And I'll just admire to you now, because like many years ago, Heidi drove here, I think from, you call it Ready? Anyway, years ago, Heidi inspired me to make my own films and not necessarily, ask permission or look for guys to work with me, and that I could do my own thing, and actually help me fill out my college application. And I quit my job and went to film school, and that's Heidi Rich.
Yeah, Heidi.
There was a lot of processing. I mean, there's things that are, sometimes questionable with like alcohol and drugs and stuff like that in the LGBT community. But like, what was interesting is that your processing wasn't like painstaking. And how did you balance that? Was it just multiple stories and piecing together, or was there some other criteria you were going by?
Are you saying that it wasn't heavy-handed, little-minded dialogue?
It was quality. It was brief, and it was done well, for cinematography versus, feeling melodramatic or, overly romantic.
Yeah. Well, I always wanted this to be lighter, and uplifting, and be kind of an honest representation of jealousy, of insecurity, of vulnerability between these 2 people, and I wanted it to shift, and I think it kind of shifts, where it's halfway through the film, it's kind of like, oh, Jane's not as strong as she seems to be. She's not as together as Jacqui thinks. She's given her a lot more power than Jamie really is asking for, I think that kind of answers your question. But do you guys want to talk?
I don't know if this is exactly what you mean, but there's something that I realized after all was said and done when I saw the movie for the first time at Frameline in San Francisco. I was like, oh, we never say lesbian in this movie, ever. We never say queer, except in like a funny song and dance routine in this movie, ever. We just live queer lives. That's it. So that's the story. They're queer people. And I think that's